everyone. Today, we're doing something a little bit different because I think the laws of the land have to comply, if you will, with the laws of God. And I do have several videos that, quite frankly, I believe prove that the charter is not in compliance with the laws of God because it allows the state or the state authority to override the very civil liberties that were given to you by God. It doesn't recognize the true supremacy of God, and it's because of Section 1 in the Charter. And so I'm going to be using a finished case. It was a case against Mr. Hildebrand and in Elmer, the Church of God, and they used the Charter to say, hey, you guys violated our religious freedom. And by using the Charter, indeed, the state admits that they did interfere and violate the freedom of religion. But then, of course, the Charter has Section 1 that makes it look like it's lawful for them to step in anytime they want and tell you, you can't worship or have your own free will as to how and who you want to worship. So let's get right into the case law itself, and I will prove to you that that indeed is what happened. As you can see here, we have the Canley law document, if you will, of the case, and I'm going to show you how it is the state being challenged, if you will, by the Church of God right here. And of course, you see Henry's name right here. Sorry, that skipped on me a little bit. There you go, right there. Okay. And again, we're not talking, speaking against Henry's spiritual situation. We're saying this charter is going to create a situation for all Canadian citizens that if they use it, essentially the state can just remove your rights, which means if they can do it at a whim like this, you don't actually have them. So I'm setting out to prove to you that the charter is indeed a totalitarian document, and it's not good for Canadian citizens. All right. It gives the state its authority. And I want to prove to you, whether you're a believer in God or not, you don't want the state to be able to pull away your civil liberties. All right. That's the point. So this is what ended up happening. I'm going to scroll down here because there's a lot of verbiage on the case. And I'm going to prove to you that it wasn't because they didn't have a good case. They did, because again, the government admits in this that they did violate the freedom of religion clause. They admit that they violated the freedom of religion clause. So let's keep this video really simple at this point, and we're going to do a part 2 to this. Here's the conclusion, because that's what we're interested in, right? And this is what it says. Okay, what they do is they pose 3 questions here at the conclusion. It says, did the Ontario restrictions on the size of religious gatherings interfere, which I would say violate, with the fundamental guarantee of freedom of religion in Section 2 of the Charter? What's the answer? Yes. Yes, they totally interfered with this guarantee. We're going to go to Section 2 real quick. As you can see here in the Charter, you have your freedom of conscience and religion. So did the state admit that they violated that? Absolutely. They just said yes. Does that mean the Church of God won? No. Let's go to question 2. Did the restrictions interfere with other fundamental freedoms guaranteed in Section 2 of the Charter? I love this answer. It is not necessary to answer this question given the answer to number 1. Do you want to know why they're saying that? They're saying, what's the difference whether we violated one of your rights or several of them? We're admitting that we violated your rights. So there's no point in answering this question. Why? Because of question and answer in number 3. If there was interference, which clearly there was, because they're admitting that there was, with freedom of religion or other freedoms guaranteed by Section 2 of the Charter, are such limitations reasonable and demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society under Section 1 of the Charter? And the answer is, drumroll please, yes. See, we violated your rights, and we have the right to do that. This is what happens when you make the state your God. What does Section 1 say? Well, it says this: the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms. Oh, it guarantees it, does it? So this is not a very good guarantee, I have to tell you. It guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits, prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. Now, how free are you if they're telling you you can't have more than 5 people at your house? How free are you if you can't have more than 10 people in your, 10 or 20,000 square foot location when you want to worship God and sing some songs and say some prayers and listen to a sermon versus, Costco being able to have 300, 400, or 500 during the same time frame plus their staff? Is that being free? Is that not hypocritical? That's not an issue at all? See, at the end of the day, this is Section 1 of the Charter. This is how it opens. And it basically says, we give you your rights and we can take them away as long as we think it's reasonable. And that's exactly what you got right here. They're not saying that they didn't violate his rights. They're saying that they did. What they're saying is, it's totally okay for them to do it. That, my friends, is why the Charter is indeed a totalitarian document and should never be invoked by any Canadian citizen. Instead, you should be using the Canadian Bill of Rights. And I don't care what the folks in fancy cars and fancy suits are saying. Charter makes it clear you can't win with the Charter because the state is the one that's declaring itself as the authority over your rights. Whereas the Bill of Rights, which received royal assent in 1960, and all your civil liberties, I don't care what anybody says, whatever you have in civil liberties in one province is the same that you have in another province. You can't tell me I have my rights in Ontario but not in BC. That doesn't make any sense. So civil liberties are federal. That's why this is a federal statute. So you can use the Canadian Bill of Rights on provincial issues if those provincial issues are about your civil liberties. And certainly freedom of religion is certainly a civil liberty in this nation, in every city, in every province, every part of this nation. All right. So here you have freedom of religion and no loophole saying unless we want to limit you on your freedom of religion. And by the way, just a little side note, you know you can't go around blowing up people's houses in the name of religion. That's what the criminal code is for. So this is your civil liberty document. And the criminal code is for anybody who starts to violate your rights in a criminal fashion. The Charter, on the other hand, as you can see, going back to Section 1, basically can turn around and say anything that they say is reasonable to limit your rights, they can. And that's why you should flush the Charter down the toilet. We'll provide the link to this case law in the description section. Study it out yourself. We are going to do a little more reading in this so you can get a little more understanding of exactly what the judge says as part of the conclusion. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for listening, and let everybody know the Canadian Bill of Rights is the true laws of the land because not only is it a federal statute with royal assent, but because it truly and sincerely complies with the laws of God and recognizes the true supremacy of God. Thank you for listening.